I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this is the new Haval Jolion. If you're in the market for a new small SUV and you don't want to spend a heap of money, you've probably seen some marketing for this, the new Haval Jolion. Now, it's a Chinese SUV. Haval have been in the Australian market for quite a few years now. Their sister company is Great Wall, who builds utes and vans, but Haval do the SUVs. And in fact, they've hired a designer from Land Rover, which is why the new Jolion actually looks pretty good, certainly better than the previous H2, which this car replaces in the lineup. Now, the one I've brought along here is the mid-spec Jolion Luxe, and the thing is, this car is cheap. It's $27,990 drive away, and you get a whole lot of stuff. That's about the price of a base model Mitsubishi ASX, and as I'm going to tell you in today's video, this car is much better than the ASX. Now, that is a very low bar because the Mitsubishi ASX is not a good vehicle, but as we'll see, if you're looking for an entry-level SUV with a whole bunch of specification that actually drives decently, the Jolion may well fit the bill. So in today's video, we're going to go through our usual steps. We'll have a look inside the new Jolion, we'll jump in the back seats, we'll check out the boot space, we'll talk about running costs, and then we'll head out on the road to see whether this new Haval SUV actually has a decent engine, a decent suspension, and decent handling, which is something that we've found lacking in some other Chinese-made vehicles in the past. Now, we don't do any sponsored content here at Chasing Cars, and neither is this video, so you're going to get true, unvarnished opinion on what the Jolion is really like from me. So let's get started, but first, make sure to hit subscribe. First of all, I think we should ask ourselves the question, what is a Haval Jolion? Well, the Jolion is the replacement for the old Haval H2, so what the hell is a Haval H2? These are all fair enough questions when we're dealing with a pretty new brand and a brand new badge on the Australian market. But basically, the Jolion measures in at just under 4.5 meters long, and it slots pretty much directly between the Mazda CX-30 and the Mazda CX-5 in size. So it's basically a big small SUV or a small mid-size SUV. And as you see when we jump into the back in a couple of minutes, it actually is very generous on passenger space. So I think a lot of people are going to find the size of the Jolion appealing. Another thing they're going to find appealing is the fact that it is higher spec inside than many of its rivals. I mentioned in the intro that this mid-spec Jolion Luxe is only a few $100s more expensive than a base model Mitsubishi ASX, and it feels light years ahead in terms of perceived expense here in the cabin. First of all, the design of the dashboard is very contemporary. You know, it's right up there with new Volkswagens and stuff like that in terms of how the cabin looks. Now, the quality and some of the ways that the software works are not up there, and they show that Haval still have a lot to learn in terms of making a cohesive product that feels, you know, genuine rather than aftermarket. But still, you do learn your way around all the parts. So I'll start with this screen up here, which is 10.25 inches on the base car, which is like 25.5 grand drive away, very inexpensive, and on this mid-spec Luxe, but it's actually 12.3 inches on the top-spec Ultra, which is still under $31,000 drive away. Now, thankfully, we do have Apple CarPlay. That's the first good thing about it. We have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They work through an old-school USB port, but you can see we get this huge canvas, and the system is snappier than that in the new Volkswagen Golf. So that's cool. And you'll want to be using CarPlay because Haval's own software isn't very good at all. There's really no text on the screen to help you understand what's going on. The system isn't laggy, that's good, but there's just random features just scattered in absolutely bizarre locations. Like, okay, so I want to turn the heated seats on. Usually there would be a button around here or up here or something for the heated seats, maybe even on the seat itself. No, so we have to come to the home screen, and we have to go to car, and then we have to go to seat setting, and then we have the seat heating, except that it's the wrong way around. The driver's seat is on the left and the passenger seat is on the right, and then it shows you a graphic of the seat base being heated, but it is in fact the backrest as well. So, you know, it's a bit random. And speaking of it being the wrong way around, that is the case for the structure of the interior. It's clear that Haval haven't done a great job of converting the Jolion to right-hand drive. Remember, China is a left-hand drive market. You can see the whole screen is actually inclined to the passenger seat, which is where the driver would be sitting normally. This whole panel is inclined towards the passenger. So you actually feel a bit trippy looking at this screen, which is leaning away from you when you need to try and reach out and use it. And then there's the fact the indicators are on the European side. That's not such a big problem, I suppose. But you just get the impression that this car wasn't designed for right-hand drive, that's for sure. Still, you can get over it. Then we look forward at this steering wheel. Actually a very attractive looking wheel. Leather, white stitching, that all looks good. Except, weirdly, the steering wheel only adjusts for rake and not for reach. What year is it? Like 1992? Even the Toyota Hilux now has adjustment for reach, so that's odd. So the driving position isn't good. Then we have the seat. It has 6-way electric adjustment for the driver here in the Lux. The seat's not that bad, but because we don't have adjustment for the base, my legs are just sort of flailing around. So it's not the most comfortable car. Something like a Volkswagen T-Roc, a Mazda CX-30, a Toyota CHR, all have more comfortable seats and a better driving position. But it's not that terrible, and for stints of an hour or two at a time, it really isn't that bad. Down here on the center console, we've got a rotary dial for the shifter. We've got a whole bunch of storage. We've got what would be wireless charging on the top spec car, but not on this one. 2.5 cup holders, a big bin between the seats, and another big bag holder under this center tray where you find your USB ports. Door bins, they're small. Materials are pretty hard in most places, but we do have this nice soft strip here. The armrest is soft, the seats are soft. We've got padding on the doors. So, all in all, I would say the cabin is serviceable, acceptable, it looks up to date, but when you dig into some of the details, there are still places for improvement for Haval, that's for sure. All right, let's jump in the back seat and check it out. Here in the back of the Haval, we can see just how good a job the engineers and designers of this car have done at maximizing space. It is genuinely impressive. This is still a small-ish SUV, but you can see I've pretty much got large SUV amounts of space here in the back. I'm 6 foot, headroom, I've got heaps of it. Now the Lux doesn't get a panoramic sunroof, but the top spec Ultra does, but I still think I would have lots of room. Legroom behind my own driving position is limo-like. Tow room is really good. There's a completely flat floor in this car, so you can easily get a 5th person into it. That isn't the case for many small SUVs at all. We've got air vents back here, good for a hot country like Australia. We've got 2 more powered USB ports here in the back. We've got a flip down armrest with 2 cup holders. I'll tell you what, it's almost like Haval have been watching a few Chasing Cars reviews, isn't it? This car isn't really missing any specification here in the second row. Yes, like the front, these fake stitched kind of door armrest things are in fact completely hard plastic, but at least we have a padded armrest back here. We've got another bottle holder in the door. We've got map pockets. Hey, they're ticking a lot of boxes. And even outright build quality doesn't feel that bad. Of course, Haval are untested pretty much in that sense. We don't really know what the longevity of the parts is going to be like in the Jolion. I don't have a crystal ball, but at least from the factory, it feels pretty well screwed together. Next up, boot space. Here around the back of the Jolion, there's no hiding that this is a Haval. The brand is clearly proud of their image, and we've got this big lettering across the back of this Mars red example of the Jolion Lux. But again, I think it's not a bad looking SUV in this sort of small to mid-size segment. Manual tailgate, but it opens up very easily, assisted by these gas struts. The amount of space on offer isn't bad, 430 litres, though the boot is not as well shaped as some other cars in this segment. There's a bit of an awkward step down into the boot, and you have to get a little bit creative to get the 3 Chasing Cars suitcases in, but you can get them in, which is the main point. And underneath that boot floor, there is a space saver spare. In terms of other features, we do have a couple of hooks back here, which is good to see, and there's a light. And closing that tailgate is nice and easy. Last thing before we take the Jolion out onto the road is a chat about running costs. So what does it cost to run a Haval Jolion? Well, the servicing for this car is capped for 5 years. The service intervals are really interesting. They're every 12 months, but the first service is at 10,000 Ks, and then after that, it's every 15,000 Ks. And over those 5 years, the services add up to $1,550, which is pretty cheap for this segment. Not quite as cheap as something like a Toyota CHR or RAV4, but still at the lower end for this kind of car. Fuel consumption, it's not the best. The 1.5 litre turbo in this car uses about 10 litres per 100 Ks in town. around 7.5 litres per 100 Ks on the highway or out in the country. So it's acceptable, but not particularly frugal. And the warranty on the Haval Jolion is 7 years with unlimited kilometres, and that matches Kia for just about the best in the industry. So the Haval Jolion, what is this SUV really like to drive? Well, we've had a look at the outside of the car, we've checked out the interior and the practicality and the running costs, and we've found that all in all, while there are some flaws to this car, there's also quite a lot to like. And that's a judgment that also extends to the driving dynamics of the Jolion, which for the most part are actually perfectly agreeable. And that starts with the engine, which is a 1.5 litre turbocharged petrol 4-cylinder, and it's the same engine across the range, front wheel drive, hooked up to a 7-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox. Now, this isn't the most refined 1.5 and dual clutch combination I've driven, but it's also far from the worst engine and gearbox setup I've driven in a small SUV. And being a turbocharged unit, there actually is ample torque off the line and in the mid-range, so the Jolion doesn't feel that slow, but it's certainly not fast. So just pulling out of a corner here, just feeding in half throttle or so, we're picking up pace quite nicely, and the engine doesn't get too thrashy. Now, there isn't a huge amount of noise insulation from the engine. We can certainly hear it doing its thing, but when you've got the stereo going, it ain't too bad. And actually, road noise is pretty well suppressed in the Jolion. The 1.5 litre turbo makes 110 kilowatts of power and 220 newton meters of torque, so pretty line ball for the class. Something like the Skoda Kamiq 110 TSI makes 110 kilowatts of power and 250 newton meters of torque. So more torque in some of the competition, and I would make the point that something like a Volkswagen Group 1.4 turbo or 1.5 turbo is significantly quieter, more fuel efficient and smoother, but the Haval's engine isn't too far behind. It is perfectly acceptable, and I think it's a lot better than a thrashy, naturally aspirated petrol engine like what you'd get in the ASX, for example. But actually, it's the ride and handling of the Jolion that really surprises. Now, some of the MGs, Havals, Great Walls, other Chinese engineered cars that I've driven in the past have certainly had a lot of ground to make up in terms of ride, handling, how cohesive the chassis feels, and the Jolion is a perfect example that finally these brands are starting to spend much more money on R&D in this area, because actually the way the Jolion gets down the road is pretty good. And if I sound surprised, it's because I am surprised. For a relatively new brand, particularly a new brand to be sold in a sophisticated market like Australia, which has particularly refined tastes for ride and handling, the fact that the Jolion acquits itself well on our difficult roads is a pleasant surprise. I don't want to cast the impression that this is the best driving SUV in the class, because that wouldn't be accurate. Get behind the wheel of a Mazda CX-30 or a Toyota CHR and you'll see what a truly well-sorted small SUV is like from behind the wheel. But the Jolion isn't embarrassed in that kind of company, not too badly. The steering feels way more connected to the front wheels than a ASX or an Eclipse Cross, or something like a Honda HR-V. I would say it's better than that in the steering department. And the handling, even though there is a bit of roll, that's pretty natural for a softly sprung SUV like this. It's pretty neutral, and you can tell what's going on underneath the car. The limits of the car aren't that high, but they're easy to predict. And the chassis just stays with you in the corners. Of particular note though is the suspension, which is actually really quite good on the Jolion. Suspension wise, the difference between the Haval Jolion and the MG ZS, for example, is night and day. The damping is vastly superior on the Haval Jolion. You don't get a pogoing effect when you go over a bump. It is sort of one and done, absorbing bumps, which is the mark of a well done suspension. And even though we do have a torsion beam rear end on this car, it isn't too unrefined. And Haval have been smart in going for a softer setup than some of its rivals, which are inclined to be a little bit more sporty. Instead, it just focuses on doing one thing right, which is just soaking up the bumps well. But the body control is decent enough in the Jolion. You never feel seasick, you're not being pitched around. I'm actually quite impressed by the suspension on this car. You know, it doesn't feel cheap. Some elements of this car do feel cheap, like the fact the steering wheel doesn't have reach adjustment, for example, the flat seat. Some of that stuff betrays the fact that this isn't a very, very inexpensive car, but actually the tuning of the suspension isn't one of those things. The handling of the car is perfectly fine. And then the tires, we've got Kumo tires. They're fairly cheap tires, but they tell you what they're doing. They progressively lose grip. I'm on a slick country road right now. It's been raining and the car doesn't feel like it's getting away from me. Instead, it just ebbs away. And look, driven modestly, it's never going to upset you the way this car gets down the road. The refinement is acceptable, and then on the safety front, we do have a full complement of safety systems, but simply having the features there isn't enough, and the sensitivity and the tuning on some of them isn't quite up to the standard of some rivals, particularly rivals from Hyundai and Kia that have better tuned adaptive safety technologies. So we've got AEB with pedestrian and cyclist detection. That's good to have. We have adaptive cruise control, but the cruise control is so slow to react. If you're following behind a slow car and you pull out into an empty lane, it takes a good 5 or 6 seconds to figure out that there's nothing in front of you and that it should accelerate. Similarly, the lane keep is hypersensitive, so I found myself turning that off. And also the forward collision warning, the distance warning to the car in front, it just beeps incessantly. So I couldn't figure out how to turn that off, so I had to drop right back from cars in front of me, which in the cut and thrust of city traffic isn't always the simplest thing to do. We've got blind spot monitoring though, rear cross traffic alert, and impressively, all of that stuff is actually standard across the range, which is very unusual at this kind of price point. And then the Lux goes further with a very high resolution, clear, crisp reversing camera. One of the best reversing cameras I have experienced. It's just the way it is. They've put a decent lens on the back. It's as simple as that. So hopefully the impression I'm giving is that the Haval Jolion is fine. It's not the best SUV in the class. It's not the most luxurious. It's not the best to drive, but it's far from the worst. It's a good effort, and it shows that Haval and Great Wall, at least, are learning from feedback and implementing solutions, and I think that is good. That's what we look for as motoring journalists. So that's a detailed look at the new Haval Jolion. It's clear that the Chinese manufacturers are learning very quickly how to make a decent car, and I'd sum up the Jolion in 3 words: not that bad, which for a very affordable SUV that slots between the Mazda CX-30 and CX-5 in size and is pretty full of specification inside, is actually pretty decent. So if I was looking for an affordable crossover with all of the safety tech, a decent looking exterior and a high spec interior, and I wanted to spend well under 30 grand, I would go and check out the Jolion Lux. I do think it's still worth checking out mainstream contenders like the CX-30, like the Toyota CHR, because they do have more resolved handling and better quality throughout, but the Jolion isn't as far behind as it once might have been. Those are my opinions. I'm keen to know your views. If you've bought one, let me know down below this video. Tell me how the ownership experience is going. While you're there, make sure to hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thanks for watching Chasing Cars.